Good afternoon. This is Dyke Hendrickson, and the podcast is Life Along the Merrimack. Each week, we talk about the health and history of the Merrimack River. Today, we have a guest with us, Senator Diana Dizoglio. Senator, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much, Dyke, for your generous invitation to be here today. It is my honor and privilege, and I'm excited to talk about all things Merrimack River today.
Well, Senator, you have been, one of the leaders in the past few years of the real advocate for the river. You have the Merrimack River Commission, and you have many things that you've done. One thing I wanted to ask you about is the warning system. Several years ago, it was discussed. I think it's in motion that there'll be a warning system when CSOs are coming downstream. And this is important for us in Newburyport because we're at the end of the line, as the expression goes. So how is the warning system coming?
Well, as you know, we did pass legislatively over the course of the last session the bill that we have been pushing, which was long overdue, to require that a notification be sent out to residents regarding when combined sewage overflows happen and when sewage does spill into the river. Now, this is something that is a very simple mechanism to make sure that folks are protected from getting into the water once it's been contaminated. But again, like I just said, this was something that was long overdue, that we had to battle for years in co-sponsoring and fighting for this legislation. Finally, the administration did sign off on this, and it was passed into law, requiring that folks in our communities do get that notification. This is one thing that needs to be done and now is being done. And you can get access to that information. I know the city of Newburyport has it up on their website, I believe. Mayor Holliday has been working alongside of us as a state legislative delegation to make sure that that information is going out to residents in Newburyport in particular. But the Merrimack River District Commission did receive an earmark to be, through the work of the legislative delegation, including my office, to be able to facilitate the distribution of this information. And it is going out to folks. There is a way to get email alerts about this right now. And they have now come underneath of the purview of the Merrimack River Watershed Council, who has a Facebook page. And I do encourage everybody to go to the Merrimack River Watershed Council's Facebook page, sign up, and let them know that you're interested in receiving those notifications so that you can be aware of if there's a sewage spill and make sure that you're taking proper precautions.
Senator, how is this summer as far as CSOs? Now, we know that we had a lot of rain this summer and sometimes heavy rains, which is bad because some of the sewage treatment plants upstream get overwhelmed and thus the sewage gets into the river. What is your assessment? Is the river getting cleaner? Is it getting dirtier? You're from Methuen. What is your assessment?
Well, I don't claim to be an environmental expert, and I'm certainly not down there, testing the water. So I don't want to speak to just my personal assessment of the health of the river. I think that's better left to the experts. But what I will say as a legislator and an advocate for our community for the river is that we did pass this notification bill, but that was the bare minimum. And we have a lot of work to do to make sure that we are taking care of residents along the river and promoting the health of the Merrimack River. That goes above and beyond the simple notification system that, again, was the bare minimum. We need infrastructure updates. We need to make real investments in making sure that the outdated sewage systems along the river coming from New Hampshire, going all the way down into Plum Island and down into the ocean, are updated. Now, the reason why that's been so challenging has been because it is an issue that the federal delegation does need to be involved in, our folks at the federal level, because it's interstate, right? So we have New Hampshire that we're working with. No matter what we do in the state of Massachusetts, the reality is that river goes all the way up into New Hampshire. So without the federal delegation's support and the state of New Hampshire's support in making sure that those investments are made in the infrastructure, we're not going to be able to see a complete stop to these sewage overflows. We need both states to work together. So we have pulled in in addition to what we've done at the state level, we've pulled in the federal delegation, and our congressional delegation, Moulton and Trahan, have been working in sync with each other to make sure that legislation is passed to send much needed dollars back to invest in infrastructure, both in New Hampshire. They've been working with the New Hampshire delegation, and in Massachusetts.
Well, talking about federal work, and you're quite aware of this, Congresswoman Trahan especially has been trying to get some of the low interest loan money. That's been out there for a number of years. It wasn't quite active during the Trump administration, but there's a lot of federal money out there now with the Biden administration. Is there a chance that some infrastructural money will come to the North Shore?
I certainly hope so. And I know that our Congresswoman Trahan is advocating relentlessly for those dollars to come back to the region. I would say that, you know, with some of the ARPA funding that's being spent, I certainly am advocating that a chunk of those funds go towards infrastructure updates for these health concerns. You know, we need to make sure that during this opportunity where we have billions of dollars being invested into Massachusetts from the federal level to help us in our recovery from the impacts of the pandemic, that we're looking at some of these public health concerns that have gone unaddressed for many, many years, too long. So I am advocating that some of the ARPA funds be spent on these infrastructure updates. And I know that our Congresswoman is doing the same. You know, whether or not that happens is going to largely rely on the administration and their decision on where to invest these dollars, along with legislative leadership. You have my support, you have the Congresswoman's support. We need to make sure that we're advocating to other legislators and to the Baker administration to make sure that they are also supporting these initiatives. But I can tell you, Dyke, in just addition to that, I think it's important to say our cities and towns have been making investments through the water the water sewer budget. When you get that bill and it says water sewer, and we all pay our taxes, right? And we send in the bill for that. We send in the payment to the city for that. What a lot of cities and towns are doing in the Merrimack Valley and across the state, but in particular in the Merrimack Valley for the river, is they're taking a portion of those tax dollars that they're collecting through water sewer, and they're putting them towards the updates of the infrastructure along the river in particular, to make sure that that infrastructure for water and sewer is reconstructed. That way we're not getting that runoff, that way we're not getting that overflow. It's just that it's taking a long time because there are limited resources regarding those tax dollars. They're trying to make sure that they're not overburdening underserved communities and low-income communities with exorbitant tax increases to be able to make these infrastructure updates. Communities that can't afford these types of exorbitant costs that it does take to update all of this infrastructure at one time. So they're doing it in piecemeal. That's why it's so important that when we get large chunks of financial resources from the federal government, that we do fight hard to make sure that some of those resources are going towards investing in projects like this that our communities otherwise would not be able to afford. This is a really great opportunity that we need to take advantage of.
Do you think in recent years, more people in the Valley have become aware of the pollution in the river? The Watershed Council has been good. You've been out there. Of course, it's been around since at least 1972 with the Clean Water Act. But do you get a sense that more people are aware of it and will speak to their local representatives about the need for a cleaner river?
I do, because I'm speaking with a lot of these folks. And I will tell you that we've been advocating nonstop for those infrastructure updates, for those dollars. I would say I'm grateful for our community's patience in this matter. It's taken a lot of patience from me personally as well. Things are not moving as quickly as I would like to see them move, and it can get disenchanting. It can become disheartening, right? Because we all are working so hard to get these investments made, and then we get a bill passed to have these notifications sent out. but you know, the funding that to the infrastructure updates that we need is a lot slower than what we would hope. So I do want to say, yes, I think that folks are becoming more educated because they're contacting me and I'm contacting them back, and we're having these podcasts and we're working alongside of each other in these nonprofits, but all simultaneously need to be aware that, you know, government does move slowly. Unfortunately, I'm saying this as somebody who shares in the frustration, because folks will call and say, you know, Senator, it's not moving fast enough and we need to do more. And I'm in full agreement. We do need to do more. We do need to invest now to stop this type of pollution, because we are in a climate crisis right now and climate change is real and we need bold action to combat these types of issues. And I've been supportive of those proposals. And as we know, government moves slower than what we would like. So we need to continue to work hard. We need to not grow weary in well-doing, and we need to take the win and take the victory of passing the very important legislation of making sure that folks are notified in our communities about these sewage spills, and build upon that and say, great, let's take the quick victory lap and say we got something done, but not grow weary in well-doing, and make sure to continue to fight hard and relentlessly for these infrastructure updates that need to be made in New Hampshire, in Massachusetts, across the board, especially in our region here in the Merrimack Valley for the Merrimack River, because it's going to take that continued relentless advocacy to make sure that that ball gets kicked across the goal line. And
Well,
I know
talking about the
we're all pretty-
vicissitudes of government, Senator, talking
Yes.
about government, I noticed that you're going to be leaving the Senate. You're going to be running for state auditor. Can you talk a little about your decision with that, and also how you think you can be helpful in the state auditor's position? Now, one of the roles of the state auditor is more transparency, more oversight. Can you talk about your thoughts about leaving the Senate and moving into an election for auditor?
Certainly, certainly. You know, we're talking right now about the Merrimack River and about the climate change issue that's occurring and that needs bold action. We just passed a very bold piece of climate legislation to combat the climate crisis. That legislation was vetoed by Governor Baker multiple times. And what the concern now is that the administration may drag their heels on actually implementing the issues that we voted on in that climate bill. We have the Department of Public Utilities. We have the Office of the Executive Office of Environment and Energy, the Department of Conservation and Recreation, the Department of Environmental Protection. We need to make sure that these agencies are implementing what we have voted on in the state legislature. And that requires a certain level of accountability. Now, when you hear the phrase state auditor or the title state auditor, you know, we might automatically go to accounting and bean counting, right? And certainly the role of state auditor does have to do with analyzing and auditing the financial aspects of what's occurring in the administration to make sure the government is working efficiently and that taxpayer dollars are not being abused or misappropriated. But there's also a qualitative aspect of that, Dyke, that needs to be done when it comes to making sure that processes are appropriately being followed, and that you know, the issues that we have voted on in the legislature are actually being implemented by the administration. And that's what I plan on doing. I plan on taking the work that I've been doing in the state Senate, the work that we've been doing to battle climate change, the work that we've been doing to have transparency and accountability on where the tax dollars are being spent, to make sure that we're getting our fair share for public health, for public safety, for environmental justice, that the funds that are supposed to be being spent there are being spent there. And if not, where do those gaps exist? And as a state senator, I've been advocating for changes to these issues and for accountability in these areas. And I've been standing up and using the bully pulpit in the Senate to fight for environmental justice and for the Merrimack River and other issues of the environment in our region, What I will say is, as state auditor, I will be able to not just call for investigations and audits into these issues. I will audit and I will investigate these issues to make sure that there's full transparency and accountability from the administration to allow us to continue that fight and effectuate change from that constitutional office on environmental justice and more.
You've been a state rep, you've been a state senator, mostly in Eastern Massachusetts. Have you been traveling yet to other parts of the state? And I remind people that this is a year from now, but nevertheless, are you starting to stretch out and study the issues in other part of the state?
I certainly am. I will tell you, it is like drinking water from a fire hose. It's a lot of information, and I'm so grateful that I do have folks like yourself who are advocates for the environment, and then also for education, transportation, healthcare, housing, transparency and accountability across the board. Folks have mental health, substance use disorder, all sorts of issues that we know that we need to advocate more for at the state level. A lot of folks that I've worked with through the years have been helping in other regions to help me to get to know the local issues. And I have been traveling the state while obviously simultaneously continuing to do my job in the state Senate of advocating for these issues and more in the legislature. But it has been like drinking water from a fire hose, and I've been learning a lot of information. But look, that's the same way that it was when I first became a state senator in our area. And thanks to folks like you, I was able to quickly get educated on the region's challenges and become an advocate. And I hope to do so for the entire state of Massachusetts now and take our work to the next level.
Well, you might have a step into the agricultural community. I recently wrote a book called Merrimack, the Resilient River. And one of the photos there is when you were on that long trip, the Voyagers 2 years ago. And there's you in the bow of the kayak, and there's about 100 cattle right out along the riverside. I don't know if you remember that piece, but the photo was taken. It's in my book. So there's always the agricultural piece. As you look back on your tenure as state senator, you're not finished, of course, but what are you satisfied with? What are you pleased with in terms of what you've been able to do?
Well, I mean, just to stay on topic and on theme with what this particular podcast is about, which is the Merrimack River and promoting public health in our community regarding the CSO issue, especially. I did secure during my very short first, I should say during my early time in the state Senate, working as a new senator for Newburyport almost 4 years ago and the region, I did secure $100,000 and then some supplemental funds to come back to our region to do that pilot program for the Merrimack River District Commission, which is the reason why we were able to have the CSO notification bill passed across the finish line for the state. We set the model out of that pilot program. So we got that $100,000 earmark. We worked together with the local officials and with Merrimack River Watershed Council. We had stakeholders from New Hampshire and throughout Massachusetts come together and come up with a pilot program and a website where people could get information and a system that worked. The state picked up on that, our work locally here in the Merrimack Valley. We should be very proud of our work on that commission. The state picked up on that, and they were able to subsequently see a path forward on creating a notification system for the entire state, and finally passed. We finally were able to pass that notification bill. So again, a long time coming, but that took a lot of work, and I'm very proud of the work that we together in our community did to get the Merrimack River District Commission up and running. I was able to play a role as a senator in getting the funds from the state to come back to our region. But advocates like you, Dyke, and advocates like Mayor Holliday, and I'll say Dan Gravick from the Watershed Council, and other folks in the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission that worked alongside of us, and local city councilors, and just folks who live out on Plum Island and in other places that have been impacted along the river. Folks coming out and putting their heads together and volunteering their time and efforts really was able to make a big impact. And I was able to be part of that. And I'm humbled that I was part of that. I will be forever grateful. And I think that we can be very proud of the work that we did because it did have an impact at the state level. And that notification bill for the state was largely brought across the finish line, in large part, I should say, due to all of our efforts in coming together. So that's just one thing,
Mhm.
that we were able to do together. I know we're running short on time, coming up against the clock now, but
Mhm.
something that I certainly hope to continue to advocate for at the state auditor's level and make sure that I am auditing that program to make sure that it is working very efficiently. Now that we've voted for it, passed it, we have to make sure that the administration is now implementing that program as efficiently and effectively as possible. And that's how I can take that work to the next level.
You're an outspoken person. You have strong feelings about things. Have you had moments of frustration being a state senator? I mean, every job is frustrating to a degree. How would you assess your time? And this is our last question because we are coming to an end of our moment. But how would you assess your position as a state senator? You've done much. Has it been frustrating as well?
Certainly, there are moments of frustration, there are moments of great joy. And in those moments of frustration, I believe that takes place when we as a community are advocating side by side to get access to basic information that is supposed to be a matter of public record to
Mhm.
assist us in doing our jobs. And because the administration is not subject to the public record law, it can get very difficult and challenging to get access to the data and resources that we need as legislators to be able to advocate for change and to just understand what changes need to be implemented because we don't have access to what's actually occurring.
Mhm.
So I would say the moments of frustration come where there's been a lack of transparency and accountability in different agencies that I think could really use some sunlight. We know sunlight is the best disinfectant, right? And I know we all agree. So I think in those areas of, those areas of frustration do come in when we can't get access, right?
Mhm.
And you're trying to research information, you can't get access to it, and that can be incredibly frustrating. As state auditor, I will have the ability to be able to audit, investigate, and have subpoena authority over the administration to get access to information that might be being held back for whatever reasons. And I hope to cut through some of that frustration that our residents have been experiencing by shining a light in the dark areas of government so that we can all have access to the information we're supposed to have access to, and therefore advocate for the change that will help us to make a positive impact in our communities. So that's that answer. And, lemonade out of lemons, right?
That's right. Well, thank you very much. I've been talking with Senator Dizoglio, who is the state senator from the North Shore, the Merrimack Valley. She's leaving her position in a year, not next month, and she's going to be running for state auditor. Senator, thank you very much for being here. This is 96.3 FM radio and Channel 9 local cable TV. Senator, thank you very much for being on
Thank
the
you so much for
podcast.
having me, and take care, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Okay, thank you.